I threw this episode together because we had an awesome email from a new listener, Miss Martha. Appreciate your email last week.
In California.
We read that, and she let us know that she came across our podcast from searching about grief. I'm not sure, she didn't let us know which episode she found, but she did let us know that she went back, listened from the beginning, got all caught up.
She listened to every episode.
Yeah, which is very impressive. So I was like, you know what, the least we can do is talk about something that she was seeking. And I think that this is going to be a very productive conversation because this is something that we all experience in life at some point or another. Grieving, mourning, deep sadness. I actually pulled up the Google definitions here. So grief, or to grieve, the verb to grieve, is literally to suffer, grief. And then mourning is the expression of deep sorrow for someone who has died, typically involving following certain conventions such as wearing black clothes. So mourning is more specifically tied to the death of somebody, but grieving, you can grieve the loss of not only a life, but a relationship, the loss of an object. You can suffer and be in deep distress, grieving without necessarily needing death. So kind of wanted to talk about the purpose of grieving and mourning and see where this episode takes us.
So help me understand in the definitions here. So grief is more the feeling and mourning's like an action? Is that what you're thinking?
So to grieve is a verb, to suffer, yet to feel grief for or because of. I believe they're both verbs. Mourning, also the expression of deep sorrow for someone who has died. I think the biggest difference here is mourning is specifically tied to someone who has died. But grieving and mourning are both the expression of deep sorrow.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. So what do you think is the purpose of these emotions then? Why do you think we go through that stage?
It's an interesting thing because, especially when we talk about death, because there are some cultures there, it's all perspective, right? There are some cultures in the world that celebrate death. Like, oh, you died, you get to go to heaven. Oh, like it's a party, it's a celebration.
Right.
In our culture, it's a mourning process, it's a grieving process to where we wear black, we're typically sad, there's a eulogy. It's typically a sad event, but I think that when it comes to experiencing emotions, whatever you believe, God made us, whoever made us, we experience a whole spectrum of emotions, and sometimes we can't control it. Sometimes you wake up on the right side of the bed, you're feeling good, ready to go. Sometimes you wake up and you're like, what the hell? I don't even want to get out of bed today, and these emotions, we can't control always what emotions arise in us, but we can control what emotions to focus on. So I think when it comes to grieving and mourning, when we lose something, most of us naturally feel these quote unquote negative emotions that are more tied to the loss of something: sadness, anger, frustration, loneliness. And with any emotion, if you suppress it, if you try to be strong and not cry and not be sad, typically what happens is it kind of has this spring compression type effect, right? If you're pushing these emotions down, at some point they're all going to spring back up harder as opposed to kind of letting them work through you. So I think the purpose of grieving and mourning is to allow certain emotions to work through you in order for you to get back to your equilibrium type of state. That's what I think. What about you?
Yeah.
What do you think the purpose is?
Well, I think because we're emotional beings and we're on an emotional spectrum, and it allows the spectrum to go full circle, right? Like if on one side of the spectrum you have happiness and joy and cheerfulness and love, And on the other side, you have sorrow and unhappiness and sadness and grieving. You're whole when you go through the whole cycle. And I think that's where, to me, this really ties into like social media, right? Like, if you think of that cycle, right, you got the happiness on one side, the positive feelings on one side, and the more sad, deeper feelings on the other side. Take social media, for example. If I post pictures, when people post, it's usually all on one side. It's like the happiness, the best days, the cars. Well, that's not really your life, right? Like there's some days you don't feel happy. There's some days you don't feel sad. But if we only try to stay here, we literally eliminate the other part of our processing. And to me, that's kind of the danger of some of the lives we lead nowadays, where we don't want anybody to see us on a bad day. We don't want anybody to see a picture of us without our makeup on or without our hair done. And then you take that internal. Now we don't want people to see us not at our jubilant best. We don't want people to see us on a day that we are sad for something or we are missing something.
Yeah.
And I think that is the fact that you even said it in your thing, quote unquote, negative and positive emotions, that the fact that we even assign positive and negative to any emotions is not healthy for us, because we are emotional structures. We're emotional beings. Like, in one day, I should go through probably all my emotions. That's a good day, right? That means I had a whole full day. I should be happy. I could be sad. I could be joyful. I could grieve a little bit because I went through my whole process. We have this artificial idea that I'm supposed to be here all the time. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a big component for our mental health issues, for just overall unhappiness in society, and quite honestly, for why we want to attack each other, whether it's through social media. I'm not talking about physical attacks, but I'm just talking about like always coming at one another, not truly listening to each other, because we're hiding behind one side of emotions and not dealing with everything.